at some point, somebody has to take accountability for this. How are we so blind to this? Like, I'm curious. There's a regulatory problem. I'm sure we can talk about it endlessly. But there's also a cultural, psychological problem that you must encounter when you talk about pollution to people. Right? What is that like?
Underlying sentiment is that the urgency is missing. Now, for humanity, I'm looking at all the products and services we buy and how we prioritize our life. To make something urgent, it either needs to be aspirational, or you need to have made peace with the fact that you're actually seeing health repercussions, like how insurance is sold to you, right? What happens if you get into a car accident tomorrow? So you know that's believable. Because people have lived with air pollution for so long, they think it's helping build immunity. That's not the case for real. Like, so many people tell me, hey, like, what happens if I go out? It's like, you spend 90% of your time indoor, literally. Like, you're at home, office, school. You're not out in the open environment for more than 2.5 hours in a day. And that too, if you're like actually traveling to work and so on, you go from your house to your car to your office, it's all closed. So if you tell me that, hey, what happens if I go out and it's going to affect my lungs? Like, firstly, you care about total exposure time, not the 1 or 2 instances where the exposure occurs. Second is that clogging your lungs with particles is not called building immunity. Yeah. Immunity is built against learning how to deal with foreign particles or, viral loads or whatever. Not that, hey, let me take in AQI word to 1700 or 1800 and as a result I'm building better lung capacity. You're actually like killing your lung capacity. So I think I wouldn't like blame entirely on politicians, because you've spoken with many of them on this podcast as well, right? So I think for politicians, they're like, okay, I'm going to allocate some money and I'm going to trust the IITs or whoever to try and solve it. Now, I'm indifferent to the brand. Globally, or even in your workplace, if you have to accomplish a task and you give it to a resource and year on year it's not performing, you're going to change the resource. We have not changed the resource. We're giving the same people who've not succeeded at solving the problem more and more money and time to solve the problem.
By this, do you mean the bureaucrats?
Not just like, I have to be very careful about this, but like, I think not just bureaucrats, I think to some extent some of them. Then there's certain governmental agencies, there's certain labs and educational institutes to whom this money is given. I'm not saying that money is getting misused. I'm just saying that, hey, whenever we want to solve a critical problem, you want to give it to the most competent person to solve that problem, as opposed to the best brand to solve the problem.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that's where my point is coming from. It's like, I see the intent, right? And the intent is, I want to do something because I want to be the hero who solved this problem. That's the political angle to this, right? Please be the hero. But then what's limiting you is that you're giving it to the same people who've not succeeded in the last decade. You have to change the approach entirely, right? To try and solve it.
There is a very interesting idea I came across that I had no words to describe previously, from reading Nassim Taleb. And it's a popular idea now. It's called skin in the game. The idea being that you need to sort of, the person that is performing the task needs to have upside and downside in the task for it to actually matter. If they have no upside and downside and it does not change the course of their life, there is no way you can expect a rational agent to behave rationally, right? Like, it's not going to be rational about it and get passionate. And very often, there can be a decay in handing off problems to agents that cannot be fired. Yeah. If somebody cannot be fired, if they know they have perfect immunity, they also do not have the largest incentive to... And one version of saying this is, if all bureaucrats and politicians sent their kids and their family members to government schools and government hospitals, the quality would improve. Yeah. Because now there's skin in the game. Now their kids have to be educated. And look, I get it. The discomfort also I get. We're not here to blame people.
Yeah.
Especially you. You're here to solve this.
Yeah. Big time solving. And the whole idea of saying this is that the advantage that startups offer is that we have a smoking gun, right? We'll run out of capital. So we have finite time to build a product or service that actually works, find paying customers, and scale exponentially with those paying customers so that we are able to generate venture scale returns for our investors.
Right. That's a tough line.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that, hey, politicians, the conversation is not about them, right? And in fact, they've created platforms where we can somehow figure out how to get our products and services introduced over time. But that's where I feel changing the approach to letting more startup-y type people who have a deadline to solve the problem by is going to yield better outcomes in a shorter period of time.
I agree. I think the entrepreneur's true task is to make the impossible possible, at least if you're doing it right. And by doing it right, like, I think there's also types of entrepreneurship, in the sense that you could solve a trading problem, and that's a form of entrepreneurship. I could solve a media vacuum, and that's a form of entrepreneurship. But then there's hard problems. There's innovation, right? What sets apart Elon when we talk about the technologists of Silicon Valley is that, sure, all of them, a lot of them have done grand scale innovations. Amazon's brilliant, Facebook's brilliant. But building a product that transcends human imagination and takes you to Mars, or puts a chip in your head, or gets you a car that drives automatically and reliably, and that's Elon, right? Like, where it's a hard problem being solved through material, through engineering, through these sciences. And that's what sets him apart. He becomes an innovator in this traditional 60s, 70s way, where now innovation is limited to a new app, which is a incremental innovation on the phone being the base technology. And so I think you're solving a hard problem, and I think that's very interesting. Did you walk into this, like you did say you walked into this thinking it's a hard problem, right?
I didn't think it was as hard as it's turned out to be.
Right.
It's probably like, if without exaggeration, at least 3 to 4 orders of magnitude harder than I expected it to be.
Yeah, you were also a sophomore student when you decided that. You didn't have much experience of the world.
I mean, I had experience, like, I wouldn't say experience in the world. I just like, a lot of the ideas at the time were very utopian. And the idea was very like, under the belief that if you build it, they will come. And that did happen to some extent. But we did not account the delays, times, and non-alignment that will occur for a problem that's still so large and abundant and affecting everyone.
Yeah, say this more specifically. Actually, take me back to sophomore year college.
Yeah.
What's happening where you're like, ab main isko solve karunga? What's the conversation that's happening after that? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, idea was, hey, I have, Georgia Tech is a pretty demanding school, but I should not lose my passion for building things as a function of purely pursuing academia. And at that point, I was at a stage after working with Ramesh that if I spent time building things, it needed to have like a massive outcome, not monetary outcome specifically, but I need to solve a difficult problem. So nowadays, if you, like, very often like a few days ago, someone was pitching me their VR startup on the treadmill. I was like, dude, I'm sure it has merit, but I'm not the guy to talk to about this VR startup. So I mean, sophomore year of college, the thought process was, there's so many sources of pollution. We can't go after every source. Neither can we rely on the government to solve this problem, because it is a longer process and I don't know how to run that process. So if we have to solve the problem at large scale, can we build filterless air purification systems, so like large towers? But if you make them filterless, there'll be no recurring cost of ownership barring energy. And if you can make it inexpensive enough at scale, you can put millions of these into urban streets, so that irrespective of the source of the dust, your rate of capture on that street is higher than the rate of introduction on that street.
Now explain it to me like I'm 5.
Sure. So, filterless, I mean, all our air purifiers have HEPA filters.
The things that trap the air particles.
Correct.
Yes.
It's like a sophisticated version of a cloth or a paper filter, right?
Microfiber hota hai, aisa kuch rehta hai.
Correct. Right. Now, if you put it outside, it's going to choke up within half an hour.
Because there's so much matter.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So now, if imagine city scale, if you build these massive systems which are filled with filters, changing it every hour is not affordable for an economy.
Sure.
So to make clean air outdoors possible, your device has to be filterless. Correct? Which is where a lot of our IP is. How do you make filterless air purifiers and scale them? The second thing is, you want to make it cheap enough, like a street lamp or some small thing that we see around the street, where you can put millions of them on the street, right? So if you make it filterless and you make it cheap enough, you can actually make it abundant.
Sure.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first chain of thought. Second chain of thought is, air pollution is unique on every street. So it's the architecture, the wind conditions, the sources all affect how the pollution flows on that street. Now, we can't assign a full blown engineering team to every street in the city, which means we need a imaging and AI based method that can auto solve this pollution street by street using these filterless towers. This is what I was thinking in sophomore year, right? So that if you build this abundant hardware solution, which you can make for 5, 10, 50,000 rupees at scale, and then you put them all across the city, the cost of that is still less than 1% of the loss of productivity induced by the air pollution.
You know this for a fact, or was
I
this
know
your
this for a
hypothesis?
fact. No.
That the amount of productivity. So let's say you are doing it for 10,000, and for a city like Mumbai, you probably need, I want to say 50,000 of these to cover the city.
So like there's a street lamp every 40 feet.
Right.
So let's look at the population dense areas and put.
Bro, अभी तो हमने बिल्कुल surface scratch किया है. If you want to know कि क्या मस्त, interesting, innovative, unique conversation, which was a full conversation, तो आप जाओ main channel पे और click करो यहाँ.